A spiritual awakening is mandatory.
Life can be a contradiction.
But it doesn't have to be a lie.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Contradiction with myself, Bernard Alvarez, and Roxy Lopez. Today, we're going to be speaking about living in the 3D matrix, and it is a contradiction for many of us. Many of us are much more evolved. We're very aware of what's happening, and living in the 3D matrix can be very complicated. So, to help me with that, I have Roxy Lopez here, who's joining me, and Roxy. We spoke about this show probably at length more when we were developing and producing it. Tell me, remind me again, or remind our viewers a little bit more about what is the 3D matrix and all the contradictions that we're dealing with.
Again, bringing it home to the individual thoughts, what thoughts that you've had to help you align to this topic. The 3D matrix is simply, it's got its box, and it's the way the world functions. We mentioned it in an earlier series. For instance, we work, we pay bills, how the monetary system works, how the government works or doesn't work, whatever you want to call it. We seem to be really confined in a structure that doesn't behoove us to move forward, think out of the box, be creative in many different ways, and that's for the masses. I'm talking about 95% of the people. That you are born into a world, you're taught to go to school, you're taught to get a degree and be in debt the rest of your life through college. You're taught to get a job that isn't available for you. You're taught to buy a home, have children, get credit cards, have a good FICO score. I mean, the list goes on and on. And beyond that 3D matrix is actually a whole different planet. So living on this planet is about perception of the 3D matrix. Once you see the constructs of it, once you see that mold that you were molded into, once you see it for what it is, it doesn't mean you just trash your life. I'm not trashing people who go to college. I went to 1 year of college. I'm not trashing people who are scholarship students wanting a good education. That's not my point at all. I'm talking about the big picture of when you're born to when you die, that we are born into this matrix of ideas and ideals that are not our own. How do you step out of it? First, you have to recognize that it exists, and hopefully we can inspire you to do that. Once you recognize it exists, now you have a solution. Who are you really supposed to be in the 3D? Who are we really? What did we come here to do? Well, I'm a musician. I came here to play music and do art. I love to paint. I love to draw. That's what I did. And I had a wonderful teacher from 3 years old, my grandmother, who inspired that for me to continue. And she brought me instruments, and my father started buying me instruments as well so that I could play music and then record music and write poetry and read it to my grandmother and so forth. What they did is not only encouraged it, but my grandmother was a school teacher, so she would help me after I'd written something to kind of correct my language in it and so forth. So she really geared me up for honing in on writing. So with that in mind, I got to be in this world the person that I came here to be. I love music. I love creating. I love, even like when we were creating this show, I love that. It just charges me up, and so with that in mind, I think we're all creators. I mean, I don't think that just some of us are creators. You might say, well, I can't sing a note to save my life, or I can't play an instrument. I'm not saying you can. You might be an artist. You might be a photographer. You might be somebody who goes to your local school and creates a program for the kids. You might be somebody who writes movies or movie scripts or books, or anything in the creative arts is so freeing. And if you notice, anyone that you have met in your life that is in the creative arts of one way, fashion, shape, or form, okay, is really an outside of the box thinker. They don't live like normal people, 9 to 5. I mean, I don't even know what that means. I just go with the energy. I've been known to be in the studio and we were going to clock out at midnight, but it's so going. The creativity's flowing. We stayed till 6 a.m. till the sun came up because we don't want to lose that vibe, that where we're at in that whole thing. So what I'm trying to say, or trying to encourage all of you, is that in this 3D, that exists, this box, this cage, if you will, this environment that only allows you to be a moneymaker, paying bills into the system to keep this big system going, what have you. You're a spirit in this. And once you step out of that 3D and look at it for what it is, that's where the magic begins, because this is where we begin to know how to operate within it. And don't worry, don't say to yourself, well, I don't want to be successful because I don't want to turn out like name a star. I'm not going to. I don't want to turn out like them. They got corrupt, or they're just like making an ass of themselves on stage these days, or they're into drugs, or they died of an overdose, or what have you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the engineering, the social engineering of, if you choose that path, what you need to be. I'm saying you have the gift of being a creator. Whether it's a garden, whether it doesn't matter, whether you're a good cook, whatever. And when you do those things, don't you feel good? Don't you feel good when let's use a cook.
Oh,
When
I
you
do.
cook for your family, don't you feel great when you're cutting up this and cut, oh, I think I'll throw this in there and I think I'll throw that in there and blah blah blah, and it just expands the world. And what you start doing is you start living outside of the matrix that's confined you to these thoughts, these patterns, this way of life. You get a sense of freedom and divinity and happiness and joy. So the 3D, we're here. Learn how to live in it.
Thank you so much, Roxy. I can't help but agree with everything that you're saying. The most important thing I feel that we can do in living in this 3D paradigm is to be aware that we are a spirit in a body. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. Now, the 3D paradigm is very different to every individual, how we perceive it. But for me, and I know there are just certain universal truths that I align with, and I'm sure many of us align with, is that the 3D paradigm is an illusion. How are we going to function in this illusion? How much of this illusion are we going to give credit to? And how much are we going to identify ourselves with? It's very, very important for me as myself not to take this identity that I create. And I don't know how many of you out there go through the same thing. We change identities throughout our life. You know, so at one point you're the club kid. At one point you're the college person. At the other point you're the, ruthless yuppie, and then you become the. I'm going through my paradigm, by the way. Then you become this enlightened being, and you align with your higher self, and that changes your personality. Then you become the angry activist, and you become the compassionate activist. So we're constantly changing, and the reality of it is that is within the 3D paradigm. It's very important not to cling to our identities. Or not only our identities, but the ideas that we have. there's a very famous meme going around, and I think we've posted it several times. It says, my concepts change with new information. My ideas change with new information. My opinions change with new information. But not only that, my opinions and my self identity changes as I evolve as a spiritual being. I am no longer the person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm not even the same person I was 1 year ago when I was involved with Occupy. We must allow ourselves to see the fluidity of this 3D matrix, to see ourselves as that spirit moving with fluidity through this 3D matrix. And remember constantly, it's always an illusion. We are merely a perception, one perception of what is actually happening, one perception of what truth is at that one particular moment. Our emotional reaction is merely that. It is merely an emotional reaction to that one particular event, one particular conversation, one particular interaction, one particular false flag, disaster, whatever it is. It's our reaction that we think becomes real. So for me, I feel the most important thing that we can do, again, is remember your spirit in a body. Remember your ideas are going to change. But not only that, the 3D matrix has been created, I see it as a Chinese pinball machine. Do you remember the Chinese pinball machine with all the nails, and you shoot the ball to the top and it pings through all these little nails and it drops all the way down? To me, that little ball bouncing off the nails is reaction. That's the 3D matrix. We're reacting. I gotta pay a bill. That person looked at me wrong. I'm late for work. I don't feel good. I feel great. I need this. I want to have that. She made me angry. He's making me happy. Bing, 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 bing. Constantly in a reactive mode. I don't feel that... wait, I take that back. If we look at it for what it is, being reactive, if we look at it that this is temporary. This reaction, this I'm late for work, this too shall pass. I know that's a cliche, but it's the reality of it. This too shall pass. Stay as the observer. Don't, of course, participate in life. We must participate in the 3D matrix. Again, and I only have another minute or two, but I just want to dive into this a little bit, is that the 3D matrix for me also represents our separation from divinity. It is the moment we have separated from the one in order to create a dualistic reality, polarity. And if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be able to feel love. We wouldn't be able to feel hate. We wouldn't be able to feel fear. We wouldn't be able to feel happiness. It is because of that separation, that duality, that we are here in this 3D matrix. And we must make the most of it. And for me, I feel the best way to make the most of it is to not allow ourselves to react. And when we do react, say, oh, look at me, I'm reacting, ha ha ha. Of course we react, of course we get angry, but we must understand life is fluid. The 3D matrix is fluid. Your consciousness is fluid. Everything you're feeling right now, you're not going to feel in 1 hour or 6 hours or 6 days or 6 years. You're not going to be the same person in 6 hours, 6 days, or 6 years. Be aware you are a spirit having a physical experience here in this 3D reality. Now, as we wrap this up, Roxy, I can't help but ask you, how do we come to terms with the contradiction of being a spirit in a physical body? Do you have any advice with that, or do you have something else that you would like to share as we wrap this up?
Yes, I think that everything is part of the whole. So whether we have good experiences or bad experience in observing the world in which we live, the 3D cage or matrix, whatever you want to call it, all experience that we're having is only bringing us closer and closer to awareness in every moment. You said it so great, Bernard. Ask any POW, prisoner of war that was in the Vietnamese War, that returned home. Ask them what they did when they were literally locked up in a cage, chained in a cage for months, if not years. Ask them what they did to live outside the matrix. It's a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's very inspiring stuff. They envisioned what they wanted to see
Yeah.
take place
Yeah.
against the will of their captors.
Couldn't agree more.
And with that, just remember,
Life is a contradiction.
but it doesn't have to be a lie. We'll see you next week.
Bye bye now. We love you. What is the 3D matrix and all the contradictions that we're dealing with?
Again, bringing it home to the individual thoughts, what thoughts that you've had to help you align to this topic. The 3D matrix is simply, it's got its box and it's the way the world functions. We mentioned it in an earlier series. For instance, we work, we pay bills.
And it is a contradiction for many of us. Many of us are much more evolved. We're very aware of what's happening, and living in the 3D matrix can be very complicated. So to help me with that, I have Roxy Lopez here, who's joining me. And Roxy, we spoke about this show probably at length more when we were developing and producing it. Tell me, remind me again, or remind our viewers a little bit more about
how the monetary system works, how the government works or doesn't work, whatever you want to call it. We seem to be really confined in a structure that doesn't behoove us to move forward, think out of the box, be creative in many different ways, and that's for the masses. I'm talking about 95% of the people. That you are born into a world, you're taught to go to school, you're taught to get a degree and be in debt the rest of your life through college. You're taught to get a job that isn't available for you. You're taught to buy a home, have children, get credit cards, have a good FICO score. I mean, the list goes on and on. And beyond that 3D matrix is actually a whole different planet. So living on this planet is about perception of the 3D matrix. Once you a spiritual awakening is mandatory.
Life can be a contradiction.
But it doesn't have to be a lie.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Contradiction with myself, Bernard Alvarez, and Roxy Lopez. Today, we're going to be speaking about living in the 3D matrix.